There have been many bizarre and definitely weird scenes that have shown up in the Godzilla franchise over the years. But every once in a while, you get something that is not only strange and otherworldly, but certain things can be just downright unsettling in a very gruesome way. And when it comes to the Titanic-sized monster from Japan, one particular scene stands out as the most disturbing attack he's ever made in a movie to date. In 2016, Toho released Shin Godzilla, their first official entry in the monster film series since 2004's Final Wars. The movie was a massive success, not only winning a ton of praise and attention from Japanese critics, but also developing a sizable following over here in the West. The movie was met with a lot of mixed reception by some other people though, who thought it was just too drastic of a departure from what the character was largely known for. And if one scene in particular had been allowed to remain in this movie, I'm sure it would have gotten even more controversial for those people. What's going on, guys? Hope you're all doing well. So we've already gone over the scene where pieces of Shin Godzilla's flesh were supposed to represent the sort of gruesome idea where the monster was continually evolving. They kind of like fell off of him in this other scene from the film. And we've also talked about the abandoned fifth form idea where the monster had a bunch of Godzilla monster people sprout out of its tail at the end of the movie. But this particular scene would have definitely been the grossest and most bizarre. So get this. While Godzilla was still in one of his earlier forms, the idea was for him to stand up and vomit this toxic blood from his mouth that spills over the streets of Japan and even does serious harm to the surrounding area. Cut for what many believe to be just a way too violent and strange scene to put in a Godzilla movie, the 2016 film opened the sequence with a few helicopters flying around the more amphibian-looking form of the monster while it's stomping through Japan. We get a shot from the point of view of a helicopter that's clearly unfinished since this is early previs before cutting back to Godzilla himself and getting an angle close to his point of view. The monster then proceeds to open its mouth and spew out a large quantity of thick blood. It pours out from Godzilla and onto the streets of Japan, where some much more complete special effects shots feature it pouring out like hot molten magma onto the live-action roads that they filmed around it. These shots actually look incredibly weird, and seeing the blood of Godzilla pour over what would otherwise just be like any sort of ordinary day in the city gives the movie a kind of natural disaster feel that I think really captures a more serious and, while at the same time, insane tone for this Godzilla series. And when you actually see what happens to things on the street that come into contact with the blood, it gets pretty cool on a science fiction level, and I can only imagine what it would have been like if there was like a human casualty there. Godzilla then stops throwing up the radioactive blood and sort of just stands there while a large mist of fuming waste from the material starts to ascend to the sky, and an aerial shot of the creature standing in that radioactive waste looks like one of the most gruesomely weird images that was ultimately cut from this movie. Shin Godzilla is doing things here that the original Godzilla has never done, and the way it's presented is again very much like a natural disaster, which is fitting since the movie is more or less a commentary on how the Japanese government handled the disaster from Fukushima. By the way, guys, if you're interested in my overall thoughts on this entire film, I've got a whole review of not only Shin Godzilla itself, but also an abandoned sequel that was going to be made for it, and some of the other special effects, deleted scenes, and monsters that are in the film. This is one that I really do enjoy, but I gotta admit, we need to go a little bit deeper to just look into what's going on in this film entirely. Now, the idea and logic for this scene comes from Godzilla having to cool himself off, since he's kind of just one big giant radioactive nuclear monster. So the blood he's spitting up cools him down and lets him give off more of a grisly attack that I'm sure nobody in the audience was expecting at all. We can still kind of see shades of this idea in the finished product, with the more amphibian-looking form of Godzilla spilling blood over from its gills while it's waddling about the mainland in the movie. but that was only in one scene, and this early previs would have been way more disgusting. And honestly, I think it's something that may have been a bit of a foreshadowing as far as how they defeat the monster at the end of the film. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the idea of Godzilla emitting a toxic, bloody projectile from his mouth sounds a lot like something inspired from the Dilophosaurus from Jurassic Park. But just look at how this radioactive blood affects everything around it, popping car tires, overflowing the whole city to make a super gnarly looking environment. This would have been such a radical departure from the Godzilla most people know. I think it would have been shocking. Personally, I think this would have been a fun little scene had it been included in the final cut of the movie, but I still think the film works well enough without it. To me, Toho has been knocking it out of the park with their return to big live action Godzilla films lately, with both this and -1 being incredible entries in the series. I know there are some people that still don't like Shin Godzilla much, but these ideas, you have to admit, are wildly different from anything that you would ever see in the MonsterVerse today, or even the Godzilla movies that they had been making for a very long time in Japan. I don't know what it was about Shin Godzilla, but they really took that to another level and wanted to make something wildly different while also paying homage to the 1954 original. I love it. The scene is wild. What do you guys think? What do you think people would have reacted with had they seen this in theaters for a Japanese Godzilla movie? Would they even recognize the creature? Is it too much of a departure? Or is it just like the, atomic rays coming out of his back and the predator jaw separation stuff that's in the final cut of the movie? Whatever your own thoughts and opinions happen to be, I'd love to hear all about them in the comments down below. Let me tell you something, brother. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. I really appreciate it. And if you'd like to see more, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so you can be updated when I put out new videos. God bless you all. Christ is King. I hope you all enjoyed your time. And as always, take it easy.